Here we go. Okay, so this is our book club, obviously, is meeting, and we're taking a break from the book, and then we're looking at Tom's latest video, which is 3 packs. So, have the service, surrender, or the warrior.
This is not as clear as it usually is. How is mine?
Yours is crystal clear.
Okay, good. But yours is a little bit muffled.
Yeah. Yeah, you're usually clear, Vanessa, but today you're muffled.
Maybe because I have the laptop further away, so you get both of us.
Could be.
Can you hear us better now?
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is, yeah. So I'll just bring it closer. Okay.
Cool.
And when we speak, we're going to lean in. Okay, so, this is my man, my soulmate. Everybody?
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Everybody. Morning.
So we watched the video together. We took copious notes, and we've been discussing it all week. So yeah, it's fun to have him on the call with us.
Well, I don't know about copious notes, but she may have.
They're up here. Up here.
So you're prepared between the two of you.
Yeah, but I'm prepared.
Wow, that's great. So you jumped down the rabbit hole with Vanessa pretty deep there then if you're hanging out with us.
Yeah, I said I should have took the blue pill.
Too late now. You can't
This is not really steak. This is not
too late. It's too late now.
I know.
Can't unsee this stuff.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So let's set the intention before we start, because I think it's really important for us to do so on this call, because we will be getting vulnerable. We're relating to our personal experiences, right? So really the intention of this group and all of us meeting is to come together and hold compassionate, loving space for one another. So there's no judgment, there's no criticism, we don't put anybody down. We only encourage, support, love, and accept each other here, and create a very safe space where we can show up and be real and authentic, knowing that if any judgment does come up, that judgment says more about me, the one having the judgment, than it does about the person that I might be judging. And with that awareness, I can take full responsibility and have that intention to change my thought into one of love and compassion for the person that I'm holding space for. So yeah, let's go around and do a check-in on the video. What do you guys think? Daniel, you want to start? What do you think?
Sure, I loved it. It was very deep. I had to listen to it, rewind it, and listen to it. Rewind it, listen to it, just to get a good understanding of it. And not sure if I understood all of it, but hey, that's why we're here. We're learning and growing.
Exactly. That's exactly why we're here. Yeah. Suzanne, what do you think?
I also watched it several times. It was hard for me to watch it in one go from beginning to end, but I think I had it on 3 different times to get through it, and yeah, I like when he dives into some of this stuff in more detail than he does in the book, because it's helpful, and it's also helpful now to have a discussion with others.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, I agree.
For myself, I mean, I like that we have a break from the big book. It's a lot easier to listen to it than to read the big toe. Yeah, and I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to discuss the details so we can sink in deeper. Thank you.
Yeah, going deep. How about you, Dean?
Hey, good morning, guys. Good to be hanging with y'all and chatting about this deep stuff. So the video and the 3 paths, I'm familiar with some of it. I don't recall in which talk I heard it from Tom, but I've watched a lot of Tom's videos. Over 50, yeah, between 50 and 100, somewhere in there. Yeah, it's good stuff, good material, and kind of makes you think, analyze, how you're going about your path, your spiritual evolution, if you are, and it's evident right away, right, that all of us, or most, everybody's on combination of three paths. And yeah, it's good, good stuff to percolate the mind. And oh yeah, good refresher. Like for instance, the appearance isn't evidence of what's inside. Like he says, just because you see, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but just because you see a monk in robes doesn't mean you're working with a spiritual being, or that's a spiritual being. What's on the inside is what counts. So yeah, I liked it. It was a good break, something different. So that's cool.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thanks guys for inviting me into your book club. I'm the shadow that goes behind, and I gotta leave.
He's the one making me laugh all the time.
So it actually really resonated with me, and Dean, something that you just said about just because somebody is portraying, or what Tommy said was acting, these things really resonated with me, and this is the first video I've ever watched of Tommy, and I even forgot his last name and got kind of scolded. Like, how dare you forget his last name? And I'm like, but yeah, these paths are definitely resonating, and I'm still thinking maybe I should have took the blue pill. So that's joking, just joking.
Right? How dare you forget our exalted high priest?
Exactly.
I'm on page 1 of the first volume.
Right? Yeah, we hang you up on. Did you put them on the special cult rack there, Vanessa? Crank it up.
We expect you to be starting book 2 next week with us.
I'm a laggard.
The good thing is, if you like his videos, he has so many of them out there on so many different things. So there's no shortage of videos to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a nice way to get the material.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, the videos are a lot lighter than the book.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Even if you look at it just from a scientific point of view, it's kind of interesting. My social life has had an interesting turn just this week. My brother-in-law, who has been around for 20 years, is an atheist, and just a few days ago, he kind of says that he wants to open up a friendship with me, more or less.
Nice.
Is what he's saying. Yeah. So. Yeah, he's tried to pound the atheism viewpoint down my throat before. I mean, aggressively, and I just do like the surrender path. I'm very serene about it. Like, hey, that's cool, buddy. If that's what you want, that's fine. I see a little more to it than that, but it's good. I don't butt heads with him and waste any energy on that stuff. But if you look at life from even a point like his, and there is no higher power or God or anything like that, Tom is an interesting guy that you can still find interesting from the scientific point of view alone, because some of this stuff is evidentiary and has relevance with like the double slit experiment, quantum mechanics kind of thing. So it's interesting stuff.
It is, and that's a good point you brought up about your brother and taking the path of surrender. That's the first path that Tom discusses in his videos, so maybe we can start there too. Is the path of surrender, how has that shown up in your life? And he also talks about it being a slippery slope, right? That our ego can get in there, and our ego can tell us, oh yes, I surrender, it's all good. But really, we're suppressing these feelings of like angst and frustration, and we're just burying that down deep, and then we're telling ourselves that we surrender. So have you identified an area in your life where you're doing that, or maybe that you've done that in the past? And if so, what does that look like?
Hey, may I interject for just a moment? Vanessa, your microphone issue or your sound issue is not entirely a distance thing. We're still getting funny fade even when you're close to the mic.
Yeah, is that happening for everybody?
Oh, it's better now.
That's better
now.
now.
It's clear. I just
Whatever you did, just keep doing that.
we brought it closer to us. That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
closer. Yeah, maybe closer yet is the key.
So did you catch anything that I said?
Yes.
You
Yes.
did?
Most
Okay.
of it, 80%.
Okay,
Asking
cool.
about the path of surrender and how has that showed up and the slippery slope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I don't know. For me, the path of surrender is probably the hardest one to identify with. It's that one for me is really tough, and I'm not sure. I mean, I like the example that Dean gave where he had an exchange with his brother-in-law about, religion or God or whatever, and then his view is different. So he just decided to surrender in that conversation. So that gave me something to think about. But for me, just overall, surrender is just very. I guess that's the one that pricks my ego the most. Like, what do you mean just surrender? What? So.
I'm gonna hit you with the warrior path.
Yeah. Yeah, my warrior mode is like, what? No, you can't just give up. You
gotta keep going.
Yeah, this is a fight.
Ooh-ah.
and are you able to identify the fear that's in place or the ego that's there that's keeping you?
Oh, absolutely. Big time. The whole surrender thing of it sort of brings up thoughts of
do you want to give me my headset? Oh, it's in my pants.
other. I think Donna's trying to get on.
Yeah.
It just brings up thought of losing control, not being in control, and having, and that's a scary thing for me. That's a lot of ego of not being in control.
So the fear of uncertainty, not knowing what.
Fear of uncertainty, the fear of not being able to maybe do what I want to do in a way that I want to do it that somebody else.
Yeah, and so you can identify. One of the things that I've noticed that's an easy way for me to find the ego is whenever I make it about me, right? What I want, the way that I know it should be, my expectations. Like, okay, clearly that's my ego. I need to set that aside. And so what you're saying is you find it difficult to set your ego aside and to just let it be?
It's the most challenging for me. When you're helping somebody else, even if your ego is even if you're helping somebody else and your ego's in there, it's still that I'm being of service to somebody else. And the warrior path is a lot easier, but the whole surrender thing of I'm not in control that one's just the hardest for me.
And for anybody, is that one the easiest for you? Okay, so talk to us about that.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, the thing that really stuck out for me was the following. A pronouncement doesn't change the ego. That's acting like you're surrendering. And, that really resonated when he said that to me. And I found, in my past marriage, I suppressed a lot of feelings, thinking that, I'm doing good. And, but such is not the case because, obviously Tommy indicated that this is like a large slippery slope where you're constantly on this knife edge. And it's the easiest because I can give up. But at the same time, for me, I started to recognize like, maybe I haven't dealt with all this kind of shit that I've kind of just buried. And that's something that I'm exploring right now. So.
Yeah.
So you're kind of on the more of the path of surrender before, or more passive, and.
But unknowingly, Dean, you know what I mean? Like, it was more unknowingly. Obviously, I had no preconceived of any of this. But as I'm reflecting personally in terms of, how can this relate immediately? you know, that's immediately what came up. Is like, you know, I'm stoic, I'm macho, and but did I really deal with these kind of things that were coming up? And
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think I did, you know, because more than likely I was acting and suppressing, and that's the slippery slope I think that Tommy was talking about. Like once again, pronouncing that. You know, pronouncing that you're a spiritual leader doesn't necessarily mean you are a spiritual leader, as you said earlier, Dean. Right?
Sure.
What comes close doesn't necessarily mean that. You know, and he used the example of Mother Teresa.
I love that example.
Yeah,
Right? I'm like,
great.
wow, you mean she actually yelled at people? I had this like old notion of like this wonderful saint, and then I can just picture her like, what? How dare you not do the dishes? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why she was called Mother.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents on surrender.
Right on. Thank you. Hi, Donna.
Hi, you guys.
Glad you could join us from the airport, it looks like.
Yeah, we're at the airport.
Oh
So
wow.
everybody's going to get to listen in.
Cool. Amazing how connected we can all be at
Yeah.
just about any point anywhere.
Yep. So I think I'm more surrender. That's what happened in my near-death experience. I learned how to surrender.
Mhm.
I
It's
don't
different. It's
What was that?
that what?
Jenna, what'd you say?
I was going to say I don't know if necessarily surrendering in a relationship is going to be the same as surrendering in approach to life.
Yes.
I mean, you could be passive and surrendering in a relationship, but it doesn't mean that you're surrendering to the higher, you know, the God, the source, or the higher consciousness.
Yeah, good point. That in a relationship you can surrender or be passive because, you know, sometimes we don't like to get our ass kicked by our ladies, right? Or our significant other, right? Whoever that may
We
be.
don't like to get it with the guys either.
Yeah. So the ladies, the guys, you know, whoever, we don't like to butt heads with our partner. You know, someone that we want to share love and happiness and warm feelings, and now they're, you know, doing something crazy or whatever it is, and you don't want to scold them and say, hey, you can't feed the cats 6 times a day or whatever it is, you know. And that might not necessarily equate over to a spiritual passiveness where you're more pulled back from, gosh, I don't even know what a good example would be there, but, you know, pulled back from reality and just observing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's where I like where Tom talks about is like, you know, we're all some combination of them because
Yes.
look at it. Yeah, there's
have
the
to be.
bigger picture, but there's still, when he talks about choice, it's about in every action
Yeah.
take or don't take. So an interaction with somebody else, everything. And so you can have a path of, or not necessarily the path of surrender, but you can have surrender in a relationship or in a situation, and overall that's not your particular mode of, you know, your way of operating. Because I'm sure there's times where I've had surrender and maybe I'm just not recognizing it at the moment, but overall it's probably more the path of the warrior for me. So I really like the way he talked about we're all this combination.
You know, the context of what I was saying about surrendering was of my 13-year marriage. On the back 7 years, it was very toxic. We're living in different rooms, and the communication was breaking down, and it was gone. The intimacy was gone. The emotional connection was gone, and so I was combating a lot of, you know, self-worth issues, and you know, and did I really deal with these? I don't know. And so it's different when you're in a healthy relationship, I think. But in the context of what I was providing was, you know, did I actually deal with this type of emotional baggage? And you know, quite frankly, I don't think I did. You know, and I think if I professed right now, I'd be coming from my head space instead of my heart space. Because remember what Tommy said? He said, look, you have to be skeptical every single time. Once you think you're there, and that's you're not. If you're not skeptical, then there's something wrong, and you're not moving towards your lowest entropy, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I really like how he says that you can't be acting of being, you have to be the being of the being.
Yeah, and one of the tells is the minute that you think you're better than somebody else, you really need to take a look at that. And that, because I've had those thoughts like, oh wow, I'm way better off than they are, and
Yeah.
stop. It means I'm not.
Yeah.
But it's good to have somebody say that so you can call yourself out.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
helps to have that that recognition.
Yeah, and that type of thinking is really ingrained into us from childhood to always be better. Competition, like we want to be better than everyone else.
Comparison with others, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that's something that we've grown into? Like as a child, once we're born, do you think we have that, or is it something that
Culture?
The culture sort of creates that in us.
Social context, for sure.
I mean, we're born with a fundamental process, which is to improve and be better. But then the ego gets in and the fear gets in. And that's what turns it and changes it into, oh, I have to be better. I have to prove myself to other people.
Ego, yeah.
That's all ego, exactly.
Yeah.
Is that ego a part of the programming that we're getting from the culture?
It keeps us alive.
I mean, we come in with ego. We don't necessarily come in with culture. So I think the ego leads us to build the culture that we have. But when you look back at civilizations for thousands of years, there's always been some kind of competition between people and simulation and comparison of I have this and you don't.
And it's the social context. It's the structure of society. And for sure, I think the ego is driven from the playground. I don't know, is that the proper term, you guys?
Playground. Yeah, this virtual reality is the playground. As well, it's like preschool. Oh, you grow up. He's still learning. He's like a teacher right now.
He's doing good. He's doing good.
We're all
called it a playground.
We're all still learning.
Yeah,
for sure. But we want to learn is the point for all of us, right? We're together, we're talking about this stuff, trying to figure out reality and grow and evolve and become better.
So you guys mind if I share something I wrote?
No, please do, please.
So this is what I wrote. I said, religious paths follow the surrender path. This doesn't make them, and here's the key word, quote unquote, grown up. So there's wonderful meditation techniques, and it's easy space to act as you are meditating and not actually being. So Danny, this goes to what you were saying. And so then I wrote, the ego justifies what you are doing. It's only a belief. This is the slippery slope. And so, that's where I go back to my example. And I said, this is a belief that I held, but is it actually me being? And, and that's that slippery edge. So as soon as he talked about that metaphor about a slippery slope and it's on a knife edge, there's zero room for error when you're on this path of surrender, because it's so easy to surrender.
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm talking about myself. Is it not
easy to surrender?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Trick yourself into thinking that you're surrendering.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But surrender, when you are, you give into your ego. You say, okay, for the better good or this person, I'm going to not. Oh, I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to force myself.
Yeah, sure.
And surrender doesn't mean that you're a doormat either. You're constantly evaluating the situation, and it doesn't always have to be a religious context.
Yeah.
When you're thinking of others, when he said the end game, the love, when you love and you think only of others, you are surrendering your ego.
But I think that's why it's so difficult to get to probably the true surrender.
True surrender, yes.
True surrender. We have this passive aggressive, oh, I'm surrendering, and
correct.
but I think the true surrender is probably very difficult for
Yeah.
these egos to deal with.
There's a real blurring of the term here, surrender.
Correct.
I'm even starting to feel a little confused myself. Like, I'm sorry, Vanessa. Or what was your name again?
Bobby. Bobby.
Bobby. Okay, I didn't catch it. So, yeah, I lost my train of thought, but it was about the blurring of the term surrender.
Yes.
Yeah, and like what Bobby was saying with in reference to his past marriage, there was a lot of surrender there, and we're kind of talking about surrendering maybe a point in an argument. Like, instead of arguing, I'm just going to surrender and bottle it up, right?
And I don't really mean it. I just don't want to deal with it.
Right. And that's a completely...
Yes.
And again, I'm kind of working this out in my head, but that's a completely different type of surrender.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a real blurring of the term. So
let's use true surrender.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we got another term for it, true surrender.
Yeah.
Okay,
true
so
surrender, where, but can I give an example, Dean?
Please. Yeah.
So when I drowned and I died, and I was talking with the source, and so I was given a choice. I said, well, what do you want to do here? And it's much more involved than that. But I basically said, I surrender that choice to you. And then paused, and I thought, oh, what have I just done? Because I could be, it was a choice, like you said, Suzanne, a choice between living or dying. And so I said, I give that choice to you. You made me. So, and then that pause was where I really learned the value of true surrender. Where I didn't know what was about to happen. It was really the unknown. And next thing I knew, I was back drowning again. And so I knew I was going to live. To me, I always felt like I learned the lesson of true surrender and brought that back into this 3D place.
Wow.
Of what it means to really just give in to something without knowing its consequence or what's going to happen next. Maybe know what a consequence might be, life or death, but
okay,
that's all I'm saying. True surrender. Is that
right?
Right?
So yeah, it does. It does. So the true surrender, or the surrender we're talking about, more clearly defined, is the acceptance of the deeper reality, perhaps, or the circumstances that you've been dealt in a spiritual way, or higher power. Like, you can feel it's the will of the greater source, of the greater good, something that's beneficial for the greater good, and you maybe surrender to that and help things flow a direction that was beneficial towards everything, as opposed to surrendering in a fight, argument.
Correct, in a fight. So for me, it's like, it also means surrendering not in a spiritual sense, in a real sense, in a practical sense with the people around me. I can still surrender in a true surrender.
So
and it's not a fight.
When I hear that and thinking about interacting with other people, I don't really look at the path of surrender. I look at the path of service, because I'm making it about them. I'm like, okay, Vanessa, get out of your own way and actually listen to this person and see where they are coming from. Sometimes what's in their shoes. So when I'm making it about them, I'm in service to them. I'm really there for them. It's all about others. And surrender for me is more like letting go of expectations. Letting go of the way that I think things need to be, and then really and then as you hear sometimes we always say, like, trust the process. Just trust. It's learning to trust that everything's going to work out. I don't need to manipulate or control or make things happen the way I want.
I think surrender is I give up a choice, and service, I'm making a choice.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, you're making a choice to
making a choice.
With the other.
Whereas surrender, I've given up that choice. Or
Donna, I have a question for you.
Yeah, Bobby. Yeah.
So, when you came back after your near-death experience, did you, when you look back upon your life at that point, did you become, and these are the words that Tommy used, during this section. He said, if you want to really understand if you're on the true path of surrender, ask yourself, have I changed? And he said,
Oh,
have
yeah.
you become kinder? Did you become more helpful?
Yeah.
And if you see yourself as, what was
Suzanne?
Suzanne was saying, as more superior or more knowledgeable than
Yeah.
others, therefore you need to understand what level of surrender you're at. So the question to you then ultimately is, after that experience, did you become a better person because of that? What are your thoughts?
I don't want to put a better as a value,
Okay.
but I definitely was changed.
More kinder, more helpful. You just you saw the lens a little differently, or?
I look at things differently because I know what it's like to die. I know what it's like on the other side, and it changes everything that you do. It changes everything that you do.
Yeah, I had a near-death experience where I didn't necessarily die. I hit a pole going 80 kilometers an hour, and I saw my friend and I actually outside the car, and I woke. The seatbelt ripped my suit that I was wearing. We should the telephone pole cracked the windshield in half, and I just remember looking in the car and then staring at the concrete with the door open, and that literally, and that was 16, 17 years of age, and so that has always stayed with me, and I've always wondered why, and I still haven't come to understanding it, and I don't know if that even helped me. I'm just sharing that with you, where I'm just like, sometimes you just don't know what these things are happening.
Well, when I died, I knew I died.
Yeah.
You go, oh, I just died.
Wow.
The first couple of minutes are like, oh, okay. And then you know you're somewhere else.
Crazy.
Yeah. I'm sorry I'm holding the phone so close. I can't hear you, so you're getting a big view of my face. Sorry.
You're in our face, Donna.
I am. I mean, I'd like to be like this. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
But I can't hear anything. So, I'm sorry.
All good. So you guys, I just want to be conscious of the time as well. It is 8:38. I have to leave at 9:15, so you guys can stay on, but I just want to keep us on track for that timeline, at least the 90 minutes that we have. Bede's got to leave in like 5 minutes, but maybe we can move on now to looking at the path of service, and how does that show up in your life, the path of service, and also how does the ego get in there as well? What does that look like for you?
I think of the three, the path of service is rings true to me. Always wanting to help people out, regardless of where I'm sitting, and like I'll get up at 5 in the morning to do a coaching call. That's the way I am. So, but at the same time, when I'm coaching people, I'm thinking about me as well. So I'm thinking, that's where the ego is coming in again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm feeling that I'm being of service to somebody else, there is still an element of, oh, look at me, look what I'm doing. And so, but the thing is, I'm really trying to recognize that. And, it's like Tom talks about, okay, even if in the beginning it starts out that way, that's, you just have to recognize it and continue to work on it. It doesn't make it bad. You're just in the process of still trying to get better.
Right.
Because he talks several times about, all right, so you start out and it's not all about but you're still helping other people. And maybe at some point, if you continue to still work on it, then you just start to forget about you and it does become about other.
Mm-hmm.
The way I understood it, I made a note that I understood that the service of love work on a path of service of love, not fear. Therefore, I don't see as looking after yourself is selfish as well. Like it's also you're on the path of service when you look after yourself as well. Because you're on a path of service of love. Because you cannot be only looking after yourself if your own self is not taken care of.
Right. right? Similar to if you're on an airplane and you lose all the oxygen, you got to put your mask on first before you can put on your daughter's mask, for instance. Someone else's, because if you can't maintain consciousness because you don't have any air, well, you can't help the person sitting next to you. Or if you don't take care of some of your basic needs, loving yourself, you can't love others, and so on and so forth.
Once you have served yourself on the path of love, then it's easier to open yourself to help others.
Right, because if you hate yourself, it's going to be a little harder to love others, right? For instance, at the extreme end of it. But if you're dissatisfied with yourself or whatever, you got some dirty energy or chaotic energy. Yeah.
But that becomes a little tricky, doesn't it, when to identify you have enough and you should help others versus, I mean, for me, it's just a little tricky of how much is too much for me.
Yeah.
What circumstance is the situation, because every situation is going to be different, right?
Well, like for
more of a general.
A concrete example is like these calls. I mean, I've got grandkids in the house and, one of them wants this and somebody wants that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, I have to be selfish for an hour and a half and lock myself in my room, and you guys have to be on your own. But still, there's a little twinge of, well, maybe I should, the little one wants breakfast and somebody wants this. But it's like,
that's important.
Yeah, I need to take care of this, but.
Right.
Guys, I have to leave because I got to go to a dentist appointment, which I actually tried to change so I can stay on this call. But
sure.
I just want to, first of all, just thank you guys for allowing me on this call. Thank you, Dee. But I just want to read something that I wrote that really kind of encapsulated what the service was. And it said, Tommy said, you can tell if you're in the path of service by how you connect with people. When you're less connected and you're less referential, then that means you're acting. But to really grow up is in being kind, and so being in the caring place, because that's the way you are. Acting can help lower your entropy, and it's one way to get onto truly being in the path of service. But once again, he said this is another slippery slope. That's why I'm a warrior. Love you guys. I gotta go.
Bye.
Buddy.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yeah, and also, okay, so what you're talking about, Donna, I completely can relate to is how much self-care is too much. And I do that a lot with my kids, in that I'm like, well, mommy needs some time to herself. But then I'm like, but they're freaking little kids and they need their mom. So I can get into that place of beating myself up, which obviously is the wrong path to be on, because then we don't want to add shame or guilt or anything like that. That's just perpetuating fear. It's not letting go of it. And so I like how Tom talked about, you find a place, like he calls it a bubble. Like you can meditate, that's good. But just don't get stuck in that bubble. You want to visit that bubble from time to time. But then he also says, make sure that you have a piece of that at your core. And I really liked that, because it's like this place that when I can get into a state and I can feel connected and I feel love, to have a piece of that at my core, so knowing that it's always there and I don't need to go or do anything. I can just tap into that piece of that, to that inner peace anytime I want. And that helps me to stay connected to larger consciousness system, and then to also stay connected to everybody that I'm interacting and I'm engaging with. So yeah, I just really liked how he said that, to make sure that you have a piece of that at your core, so you don't have to run away to go get it all the time, that you can always have it in everything you're doing.
Is there any time where we do things for ourselves and just because we do things ourselves, it's not ego related, it's more like self-care? We need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you need to brush your teeth. You need to take a shower.
Yeah. So is that ego related? So I don't think so, right? So
no.
Just because we do things for ourselves doesn't mean it's always.
No, but that's where the fine line is when does it become, you're doing it for yourself, but when is it for the greater good? So you're taking care of yourself and you can serve others versus it's just all about me.
It's always about me, 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 me.
That's
That to me, that's where the narcissism comes in.
yeah, and that's the struggle I have on the path of service is when is it just me trying to take care of myself versus being selfish. So, which is why I'm clearly on the warrior path, because these other ones are confusing to me. Difficult.
Well, our overall goal is to become the unconditional love.
Yes.
So I think once we are advanced enough on this path, we know exactly when the boundary is between the self-care or self-indulgence, and where the time is to start sharing and giving. We will know that deep inside we will know.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Mm-hmm. And the more grown we are, the more evolved we are, we're always making it about other, because that Tom has said that so many times. Love is about other. It's not about you. It's about other. And it's when you've let go of all the fear and the insecurities that keep us stuck in always having to feel like we need to take care of me, myself, and I, because I need to protect myself. I need to, me. When I've gotten rid of the fear that says that I need to do that, then I can really push aside. Then I don't have a requirement for the ego, because I don't need to take care of myself. I know that I trust that I'm always going to be taken care of, that I'm always in a good place, that I am connected to something bigger than myself. And I can really just be free to be me without having to keep this ego image alive that I think will protect me.
That sort of love that we're talking about boils down to the acceptance that we're talking about, like accepting yourself just the way you are. This is enough of self-love. And now once you have accepted yourself 100% the way you are, then you are ready to surrender and start sharing the love with others.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, because you accept yourself, and in turn you accept others. You're not comparing yourself to others, and then you accept circumstances and the way things are. But yeah, it comes down to accepting me and my fears and my insecurities, and just owning them and being okay with that, and not beating myself up over that, and then doing the work you need to do to let go of the insecurities.
In the boarding area for flight 313 to St. George.
Can you guys see me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Nice job.
If you look at Tom as a role model, he's constantly in service to others. And it's not because he thinks it's the right thing to do, it's just how he is. Like here in this virtual reality with us, he's always connecting with us. And not only here, but in NPMR too, he's parallel processing and he's helping others. So that's just the way that you are. You have no needs. And I've heard him say too that needs come from a place of fear. You become a needy person when you have fears that are saying that you're not enough. You have this need that you need to get more. You need to be a certain way. You need to feel love. The need to be loved is a need that we all talk about. We all have this need to be loved. But when we are loved, we no longer have that need to be loved. So we're just whole and we're complete and we're able to give from this full cup. It just goes into everybody else that crosses our path.
I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So Bojana was saying, so it comes down to learning to accept ourselves. So what are some areas that each of us have? What's an area that you have that you're still kind of struggling to accept yourself? That insecurity that you have, something that you've kind of locked in the basement and you haven't dared to look at. If you're vulnerable or courageous enough to share that here, it is a safe space. I'm sure if you have it, a lot of us have it as well.
Well, I think a basic one, because whenever I look at my fears, a lot of them you can just boil away all the fluff, and it comes down to really not feeling like enough and being inadequate. I think a lot of other fears overlay that basic one, and it's just when you strip them away, it's like I just don't feel good enough. Like I don't deserve this, or I don't deserve that, or somebody's better than me because look at them, they're more advanced, and and I'm not there yet. And
We have to get rid of this comparing all the time ourselves and to others.
Well, comparing is a form of fear.
Right. And I mean, for me, when you look at that particular fear, it's like, I'm not good enough. They're somehow better than me.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if you look at somebody else and go, oh, I'm better than them, that's still that basic fear of, oh, look, I'm good enough to be better than them. And it's still all part of the same not feeling good enough.
I like how you say that, because with Tom's analogy of us walking on the knife edge is like not good enough or being too good, and you have to be right on the edge there, not look at both sides, right?
Yeah.
Hard.
So
My fear is not fitting in.
Yeah.
It's big for me.
You know, Dr. Seuss says, why fit in when you were born to stand out?
I love that.
But just a question, Donna, is that still part of not feeling good enough, or do you think that's
No, I think that's a little different for me.
okay?
Yeah, it's more of yeah, that's a good one. More like, so to not fit in means to not be accepted, and more that other, it stems, like you said, from a long time fear within my family. I was given a lot of blessed with a lot of talent, and I say that in a very humble way, and my brothers and sisters were very jealous of that, and I just thought it was just, who I was, no big deal, don't make a big deal out of it. And then I was ostracized and didn't fit in, and so it became a fear of that. Yeah, I'd have to really think a little more on that to articulate it. It's more like in my gut.
that was pretty good. You gave us some insight to that fear in you.
Yeah, so it's big for me
I get it.
to
Empathize with it.
yeah, it was hard for me to fit into a group. So for you guys to take me in and to love me unconditionally, that's been huge for me, enough to even venture into this book club.
Aww.
That's big. You said to say things that are at your core.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. It makes me cry sometimes.
Yeah.
It is hard, because when you said that one, not fitting in, that's what I have this fear of, and it comes up all the time. It's like I'll be in a room of people and sitting somewhere, and there's empty seats on both sides of me, and no matter who comes in, nobody comes to sit next to me. And it's that fear of,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? How come
Yes.
I'm not good enough? And
But I don't add the good enough part.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's
It's more of a yeah. I don't have that component.
I get it, because I feel that same thing. Like, I know I'm good enough. By God, I'm even better.
Yeah.
For instance.
No, I don't think that.
I can get that, but the fear of not fitting in. Definitely. Even in the book club here, which is maybe initially, but not have to get to know everybody a bit, and find out that we're all
I've just convinced myself that I give off some sort of energy that says, stay away.
Oh.
And that's, it just, and then it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't feel part of whatever the in crowd is.
Sure.
Suzanne, there'll be times where I'm sitting in a movie theater and I've got empty seats beside me, and I'll see people coming in, and I'll say, don't sit beside me, don't sit beside me.
Well, see, I'm going to share another thing. So I was a professional athlete. So people would watch me play. I'd be on TV, autographs and everything. And I learned from my dad.
What did you do?
So I learned from my dad that you're not better than and I guess he really taught me that even though I could watch my teammates and I could see their egos start puffing up and they ignored people, and I just thought I was just someone that, could play my sport really, really, really well. And I don't name it because people put value on that.
Oh, I was just curious.
Me too.
I was I played women's professional fast pitch softball.
Oh, well, that's not really a sport then.
Yeah, see, there you go.
I'm just.
Okay, Dean, I'm gonna be a warrior now, man.
You're awesome. That's the best. That's the very best sport.
Say that, man. No, yeah. Either way.
I'm just kidding with you.
Yeah. So for me,
that.
I learned that I was good enough. I was given the talent, and I know that it was a blessing. And I used to say I might as well be. Now I used to say, you're gonna laugh when I say this. I used to say I might as well be proud of the color of my hair. I used to have color in my hair, but I mean it was whether I had brown hair, white hair, whatever it was that I had. Yeah. It wasn't like I did anything for it. I mean, I was given certain things and just I took responsibility for that. So there's a difference between not good enough and not fitting in.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. I actually did a talk last week, and that was my opening. Is have you ever felt like you don't fit in, like you don't belong? And I felt like this my entire life, where I felt like I didn't fit in with my family. I was always the black sheep. I just never fit in. And at school and in everything, it was feeling like I don't belong. I'm not supposed to be here. Nobody gets me. Nobody understands me. And that's followed me throughout my entire life. And so that's why I created this ego image, because maybe they don't get me, but they'll get this. I know they'll get this because this is like them. And so that went with me into the business world, and it was, and I totally disowned a part of myself, the true me that wanted to fit in. Instead, I just stuffed that down and pretended to be something completely different, not inauthentic. But it was when I started actually facing that fear of not belonging, that I was able to then start being more congruent with who I really am. And it was when I started sharing that, hey, I have this feeling like nobody likes me. Actually, that's what it came down to. And I had this thought, and it wasn't until I went to the fucking Monroe Institute the very first time. And I remember being at that little airport in Virginia and sitting there, and I saw a girl, and I was like, oh, I wonder if she's going to the Monroe Institute. And then we ended up talking, and in my mind, I was like, she totally doesn't like me. I don't know why, but she just doesn't like me. I don't know. And when I was at the Monroe Institute, and Tom was there, and he was teaching, he's like, you have to own your fears and look at your fears. Sorry, I'm just gonna quickly go like that, Donna, because I could hear the background. You take it off.
Right, thank you.
But he's saying, you have to own your fears, those fears of inadequacy. And then he looks at me and he's like, and those fears that say that people don't like me. And I was like, how the fuck did he know that? And so since then, I've been really acknowledging that, but it still comes up, and that was friggin' like 4 years ago, but it still comes up like, oh, they don't like me. They don't like me. And I've even had that with Tom. I was on a call with him yesterday, actually, and I remember thinking like, is Tom mad at me? I think he doesn't like me. And like, I know it must come from like childhood, right? Where
yeah, for sure.
They're like,
for sure.
Oh my God, they don't like me. And then and that's where that low self-esteem comes in. And so it's just owning it and being like, okay, I have low self-esteem. I have low self-worth issues. And that's okay. I'm working through them, and I'm doing it through these different avenues. One being this, where it is a safe space and I can talk about it. I can just open up and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's in my basement, and then unpacking what's in there and setting it free.
Do you remember what Tom says about on the warrior path, it takes a lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
So, 4 years can seem like a long time, but really it might take your might take several lifetimes to truly address the fears.
Yeah, and I remember asking him too, because that's what I heard a lot at the Mineral Institute the first time. Everybody was saying, it's going to take me lifetimes to get over all these fears. And I was like, Tom, is it really going to take that long? I'm like, I don't want to wait lifetimes. And I'm like, if I'm really passionate about growing up and getting rid of my fears, can I do it exponentially? And he said, absolutely, you can. He's like, when you know why you're here, you know your purpose is to get rid of fears, then you accelerate dramatically. Because otherwise, before you know, you're just wandering around aimlessly out in the field. You have no idea why you're here. But when you actually know, then you apply yourself, and it happens much quicker.
Right.
That's beautiful. That's very helpful.
The more you work at it, the more you learn, the more you know, then the faster you absorb new material, and the faster you learn once you know. Thanks for sharing that, Vanessa. I empathize with that entirely. I empathize with all of it.
Thank you for holding space and accepting me. Like Donna said, thank you for loving me. And Donna, we do love you. I love everybody here. So much love.
If I didn't know that, I wouldn't be here. I do know that. I feel that.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I see you as a very courageous, loving individual, Donna. Like I remember meeting you in Tennessee, and you saying like, I love you, and I'm like, oh, I love you, because most people don't do that. Most people are so afraid of putting themselves out there and being open like that and sharing their feelings. So that's it's so refreshing to meet someone like you who, in a world where everyone wears a mask, it's nice to be connected with people who take it off and show their true colors.
Thank you. That was wow. Thank you.
Very nice. Very cool.
So the last path that we haven't looked at really is, we've talked about it a little bit, but the Warrior's Path.
Yeah.
How does that show up for you guys, the Warrior's Path? Any particular experience with the Warrior's Path that you found helpful or not so helpful?
I think if we define it like we did with surrender, it's not warrior fighting in the sense of defensive, but I don't know, more like, to me, the warrior path is being brave enough to keep going.
Having courage to face your fears.
Exactly. That's
it's like wrestling your ego and your fears.
Yeah, I like
that's what you're fighting. Your ego and your fears and
beliefs
and all of that. Not people or situations.
Not exactly.
You're fighting
right.
Ego and fears.
Internal stuff, not external.
And to not be complacent. Don't get to a path. Don't ever get to a path where you go, okay, yeah, that's it. I think I'm pretty cool. I'm never, like to keep going and going. And it really helps to know. I had a fear of when I started some of this work was I got to start all over again in my next life. Oh my God.
Right.
So that was helpful, so yeah. So to never be complacent, to keep growing and growing and know it's really helpful to me to know that I can take what I've done here into the next one. And that's what Suzanne taught me too. Suzanne, you've been really good about teaching me that no matter where you are here, don't compare, don't worry, wherever you are, if nothing else, you're helping yourself for the next life. That was extremely helpful.
Yeah, especially if you're taking it down to the being level. It's part of your core makeup. And all that surface stuff maybe disappears or you forget it in your next life with the mind wipe. But the being part that's down in your core, is how you function. It's intrinsic, what makes you up. So you take it with you wherever you go. And conquering those fears would be down at that level.
Yeah, that's the real you, being level. And the being level, the language of the being level are our emotions and our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Be in touch with those feelings and those emotions is so important. That tells us who we really are. That's who we really are. And we've been conditioned to grow up in a society that teaches us not to trust emotions, to suppress our emotions, and bury them down deep. And so now we're kind of undoing all these conditions of years and years.
No doubt, right? Like you were talking about things, this fear of not fitting in or people won't like me, and where did you pick it up? And I would suspect mine is childhood as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of it.
Yeah, certainly some of it is no.
Yeah, and so now on the warrior's path, it's like, okay, I know that I have this fear of not being good enough or the not fitting in, people not liking me. I have these fears, and I know that, and I want to get rid of it. I don't want to be that way, right?
So now what do I do, right?
Yeah, it's a doing.
You're aware of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically having this awareness that we have that ego or fear or certain belief, addressing it and getting rid of it. So this is the warrior's path. But I do have that little bit of controversy with the statement, like, oh, just be yourself, when we are constantly trying to change ourselves and be better. So how do you address that? Like, be yourself, meaning don't change. But
no, I don't think so.
I don't. Yeah. I don't think
personality-wise.
Yeah. The way I understood it was you have to accept yourself how you are, as you still struggle to be better. So don't pretend you're something you're not. But I think
just be yourself.
Don't be complacent about the fact that that's like, oh, this is just who I am, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I think for us, like, you get into still trying to be better, but you can't pretend to be something that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not about pretending, but and I see being myself is constant journey to become better version of myself.
Okay. Hosanna, for me, it was, my friend said to me, I was talking about things I was doing, and he stopped me, and he goes, well, we're human beings, not human doings.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of stopped me, and so now what I do is I check in with myself and see, what is my state of being? Like this week, what was I mostly? Was I joyful? Was I annoyed? Was I, what at the being level, what was I? And to me, that's your state of being. And then we are human doings in the sense of we are in a playground, we are with other people, we do things. And so for me, it became that knife edge of being and doing. On one side, I'm a human being. What's the state of my being? And the other side is, but I'm doing things to become better. Does that help? It kind of tells me this is where I'm at right now in this moment. And the doing part is what I'm going to do, what I'm becoming in the future. So one is the present and one is the future, if that makes sense. Does that help, Hosanna?
Yeah, I mean, there is different ways of kind of like interpreting that,
Okay.
being and changing and being at the being level, it can be confusing, but the overall idea is to accept who you are, but still don't just be yourself the way you are, but constantly try to improve who you are.
Yeah, and that's kind of like step one is be yourself. He talks about that a lot too, because he's like, yeah, you want to be authentic, but that's just step one. Be yourself.
Yes.
And then once you recognize who you are, grow, change, evolve.
That's right.
He says it can be difficult to go to step one because most of us are not there. Most of us are in our ego. We don't even know.
I guess the way I look at it is, I heard him explain it once. It's like, following your emotions to see where that takes you. But if you're angry, don't pretend you're not angry.
Yeah.
Be angry. Yeah. And then if you don't like being angry, okay, well, follow that to what is the fear underlying what made you angry in that moment. And then it's like, okay, there's something I need to focus on. But it's not the pretending to not be angry.
That's your state of being. Your state of being is angry.
Yeah.
Angry.
Don't pretend that you're not.
Yeah.
Because that's the key. And I really like the way he talked about following your emotions to get to your fears.
You guys, I gotta go.
Okay.
Okay, love
Okay.
you, Donna.
I love you.
Hey, Donna.
Okay.
Seeing you, Donna. Bye.
Good trip.
You
Thank
guys can I share a story, like a personal experience with this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So and it's around Bobby and I. We listened to this video a couple nights ago. We finished it off, and then yesterday morning we were cuddling, and then we started talking about our previous marriages, and he was kind of he had this energy like, yeah, like I did so much for her in the relationship, and she never reciprocated, and I could tell he was like angry, and then I was just kind of holding space for him and helping him to feel that, and then as he like navigated how he was feeling, he recognized a lot of his insecurities and his fears, and then he started crying, and I was like, wow, this is so healing for both of us. We're like, it's amazing. And then I started like sharing about my own marriage and crying and recognizing a lot of things that I had suppressed. And so after the session was done, we were like, wow, this is amazing. Like, let's revisit this tonight, and we can uncover some more things that we've suppressed and heal them and set them free. Yeah. We're like, and then throughout the day, we're like messaging each other. We're like, wow, we really like got into our basement and we turned on the lights. And, he's like, thank you. You like found the key to things that I had locked up down there. And I was able to open it up. And I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to do it again tonight. And so last night, we're like, okay, we're ready to do this. And so I'm like, okay, so talk to me about your marriage. What did that look like? And then he's like, well, and then he just started saying he's like, well, in my marriage, I did a lot of things and she didn't reciprocate, but that's okay because I understand where she was coming from. And he was very just saying the things that he knew he should say. And I was like, I don't know, babe. It's different now. I'm like, not like it was yesterday. Yesterday was a lot more organic and it just kind of came up. And I'm like, but it kind of sounds like you're saying everything you should say. And he's like, what are you trying to say? Like it's rehearsed? And I'm like, kinda, because this is the same story you've been telling me since we met. And then he's like, fuck. Like, yeah, I need to be skeptical. That's what Tommy says, right? I'm like, a little bit. I'm like, because we're not in the basement anymore. We're just kind of like on the top floor, and we're hanging out up here. It's like surface, superficial. But I thought we wanted to go deep and like get into the basement. And so we spent hours like working our way down into the basement. And then when we finally got in there, I felt like a fucking piece of shit because I'm like so open and vulnerable, and I'm like, I got all these fears. And then he starts talking about his, and then we start like getting triggered over each other's, and it was just dark and like scary, and I'm like, what? We're never gonna do this again. I'm like, now we're both in the basement and nobody's throwing us a rope to like help us get out of here, So I think it's gotta be like really just kind of organic in how it happens, and you can't plan it. And a lot of therapy is that. A lot of therapy is like trying to make you go there and force it to happen, but
it's very really planned. Yeah.
Very planned. Yeah. But then how do you plan your emotions? Like Tommy says, your emotions happen at the being level. They just come up because that's who you are. That's how you feel. You don't think your way to feel a certain way.
Do you think, Vanessa, that when you waited and say, hey, let's do it next day, that's when your fears sort of came up and said, let's find a way to not make this happen?
I see where you're coming from, and it was just because he had to go to work. He was already an hour late, so he had to get up and go to work.
But I'm just saying that by delaying it, fears came up and said, well, let's just figure out a way. This is going to be scary when we talk about this, so let's figure out a way to prevent you guys from being authentic and actually going and trying to figure out why it all happened. And then fear said, and it found a way to stop you guys from doing it because it threw up all the scare tactics after you guys.
Definitely, that can happen all the time, and that's why what I'm really trying to cultivate is a practice where when things come up in the moment, we visit
deal with it
right in the moment. Yeah, right.
Sure.
And I mean, it can be challenging when we live in the Western society, and we do have to work, and we have to, we have to deal with things. What I love is that when you do surround yourself with caring people, such as yourselves, you can be authentic. You can have these types of conversations without anybody judging or saying like, why are they going into this right now? They hold space. So we've been with some friends, and things have friction have come up between us. And normally, you know, in my old life, I'd be like, okay, we're not going to go into that right now. We'll talk about it later. But now it's like, okay, there's friction. Let's talk about it, even in front of other people. So putting it out there and being real. That's the best time to do it, just right in the moment.
That's great. I'd say that's a lot of development, and at least you guys, even if you failed, you know, and had this one session that didn't work out so great, at least you were trying. You know, even if what he was saying was rehearsed, at least he was there, present, trying to interact. You know, he did the deal, and instead of saying, "No, I don't feel like doing that," you know, you're making the effort. And sometimes we fail, right? But if you keep at it,
yeah.
Well, good enough for you guys. And that seems to me like you've come a long ways in a short time.
And that acting actually did help. Tom said that it can help. It did help because it eventually led into the being level. I mean, it took hours to get there, but the acting, it did help in the beginning. And then once he started using language like, yeah, because my shitty marriage, and before I would correct him, you know, Rojena, like about being yourself, like himself would say, my shitty marriage, my shitty past marriage, and I'd be like, whoa, babe, use deliberate, like, reframe it. Don't look at it that way. You know, say my learning experience I had. And that's where I want to go with it because I always want to improve. But if you feel like it was a shitty marriage, say it and let's explore it. That's being yourself. It's easy to trick yourself into being like, no, I'm better than that. I know this is the way it should be. But, I mean, unconsciously you're saying those words and there's a reason for it. So let's look at why you feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just
Right on.
there's a lot of growth, a lot of work, a lot of but I know I got to bounce. If you guys want to stay on the call, or do you want to do a closing circle? What do you want to do?
I'm good.
Yeah, we can close. I mean, we covered all three paths pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm going to another meeting to talk more about this.
Now you're all primed for it.
I love this video. It's the practical stuff. It's what we need to focus on, I feel like. And so it's music to my soul. I love it. Yeah, what are your final thoughts, you guys? Final thoughts? Daniel, what are your final thoughts?
I really love this, what we talked about, and how it sort of helped me get more clear on the three paths. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get a good understanding of it, but it's like getting all these little pieces of puzzles and putting them all together. So it was good. It was really enjoyable.
Awesome. What about you, Suzanne?
I enjoyed it as well, and I'd actually would like to on occasion explore some of his other videos and have talks like this, because I think it helps in a different way than discussing the book. I mean, it's just, I think they sort of feed into each other. So you've got Tom talking about the very scientific and all those things in the book, and that's good to discuss. But sometimes videos like this one is a little more practical knowledge. It's sometimes easier to identify it and how it applies to your everyday life. So I would be up for doing some other videos as well.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. Bojana, what about you?
Thank you. That was a nice refresher, and it's a way of getting out of the bubble and surrounding yourself with other opinions and people. So I really appreciate that time spent together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, here. I second that. I enjoyed our time together.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of different feelings and emotions right now. It's kind of like a kaleidoscope. I really identified with some of the stuff that was said, what Donna was saying, what Vanessa, what you were saying about fears. I identify with both of those things as well, and it's given me a lot of stuff to think about. And here's Sam. Here's my kitty cat. She's another little guy here. Come say hi real quick, if I may. This is my little daughter.
Hey, Sammy.
Yeah, her name is Azizam, which is Farsi for my dear, my darling.
I love it.
kind of different, right? Ozzy Zam, I call her Zam for short. And she's a little sweetheart. She's got great manners. She was a little stray that just started hanging out and kept coming back about the same time every day. And after a while, walked into the house with me, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, and just started poking around and kind of made herself at home and found a little spot in my closet. And she would bed down there and just be chill, never harm anything or pee on anything. And after a while, I just had a hard time putting her out midnight. She was such a doll, so I kept her.
Nice.
Yeah, she just went through some surgery with her ear. She got this little ear issue. Has the deposits inside her ear. I've spent over $2,000. Can you believe that? I would have never in my life thought I'd spend that kind of money, but it was either that or so. Anyway, she kind of helps my evolution actually. She's if I'm staying up too late, she'll get on the back of the chair and she'll start meowing at me like, yeah, it's time to go to bed, and it keeps me accountable in some little thing. So she's a fun little thing. And good hanging with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
So next week, and I hear what you're saying, Suzanne, in terms of these videos and it being a lot more practical, and I definitely resonate with that. What I'm excited for is book 2 is a lot more practical. Book 2 is jumping into the fears and the ego and the beliefs. So next week we'll look at the first 3 chapters of book 2.
3 chapters. Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.